Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Retic Lounge. I'm Lucas Bagneri, your co-host, joined by Nathan Katz, your other co-host. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you guys can, please go ahead and like or comment down below, subscribe. You can listen to us on Spotify and all other major podcast platforms. If you want to hang out with us, watch our video content, you can catch our video uploaded every Friday to
All right, as well as all the Patreon stuff, we want to remind you about USARC. That's the United States Association of Reptile Keepers. Make sure to become a member. Their member numbers matter more than ever right now. And the easiest way, honestly, to show those member numbers is to subscribe to their YouTube, donate if you're already a member, and subscribe to their newsletter.
Absolutely. Can't speak the importance of subscribing to that YouTube. If we have large numbers on a social media presence, that's just another way to show that we are a large body and have a voice. So, Nathan, I'm excited for today's episode. We are going to be talking about, is a pet retic right for you guys? For those of you interested in keeping a retic for the first time, or for those of you that had an impulse buy and you're like, I have a retic, you still have time to decide if that retic is right for you. We're going to cover the basics of, what's a reticulated python and things like what makes them different than keeping other common pet snakes. We're going to go over the pros, the cons, and just have a great discussion on things that you guys need to know and be aware about in order to keep these awesome animals and to ultimately make the decision if they're right for you. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please like, subscribe, and comment.
So right off the bat, I mean, just surface level of what this episode is keeping a reticulated python in any form right for, you know, the general public? 99% of people. What would you say, just surface level to that question?
Uh, no,
Absolutely not.
no. I mean, that's just the cold, hard truth.
Would I love 99% of the population be able to keep a reticulated python? Absolutely, but yeah, I have to
Yeah,
agree with that as well.
100%. I mean, they are amazing animals, 100% worth keeping, but they are not a easy species to keep in comparison to, other common pet snakes.
The time I was getting back into snakes, my buddy gave me a couple ball pythons, and he had just got a Burmese python, and we had been growing that thing up and hanging out with each other, and I got to, see that thing from a hatchling to about 10 foot long, 8 foot long, somewhere around there in a year. And he
In a
always
year.
talked, yeah, I mean, this thing grew quick. But he always talked about, oh, I've always wanted to own retics, but he kind of told me uh, what you'd hear from the old school guys. Retics only gonna pee and bite. That's all they do. So, uh, my first impression of retics was that they're the giant snakes and they're the crazy giant snakes. So, um, a retic to me when I first learned about them was the big scary monster of the snake world.
So naturally,
Uh,
you're like, oh, I'd love one.
yeah, but now to me, I mean, a little bit more education, obviously. Retic to me is, you know, I think the largest and arguably the most beautiful of any python or snake species, hands down. Their patterns unmatched, the colors from localities to different morphs unmatched. So Yeah, a retic is the most beautiful snake in the world to me.
100%. I agree. Now, to our listeners, we're biased.
Yeah,
we we breed
absolutely.
retics.
Yep.
So we're gonna say that they are the most beautiful python species out there. But I would say to anybody who keeps pythons, I still think that that's an argument that can be made.
Oh,
The morph
absolutely.
colors, the localities. I mean, there's that's what drew me to them. I mean, I saw an albino retic and was like beautiful, and then I saw a purple albino, and I was like, wait, what? An albino can have purple? And then I started seeing orange glows and mochinos and all these different morphs, and I was like, wait, these are all T positive, T negative albino. Like it's crazy, just all the colors that they come in. But yeah, I mean, back to what you were saying, they are known for being the longest species of snake in the world. Some people even argue that they are the largest species, that they can weigh more than anacondas. But at the end of the day, they're known for being very large snakes. So, one thing that you probably should know before getting them is that if you are going to buy a retic, you are buying a large constrictor. Now, what's cool about retics as well, which makes them very, very marketable and enjoyable for many people, is they come in small, medium, and large size localities, super dwarfs, and mainlands, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, to us, small is a relative term. Absolutely. Um, Even the smallest of locality retics, my smallest female, who is absolutely tiny, is still a giant snake to some. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you hit that on the head because I was hoping you did. If not, I was going to. When we talk about small locality retics, those for those of you that don't know the different islands, and for those of you that do know, you're gonna be familiar with these localities. But we're talking about the things like Kalatoa, Madu, Karampa. Um, Even those small island localities that were termed super dwarfs um, are still animals that can get 8 feet, 9 feet, in some cases in these small localities, even 10 foot. Um, and just need to be aware that that's still a possibility. So, um, but yeah, I mean, they're small because when you talk about a 8, 9 foot retic that's lean, you can still hold that thing bundled up in one hand, right?
yeah,
At times maybe just hunched over your shoulder a little bit because they're lean. Um,
her
but
tail wrapped
when we
around
say,
you.
yeah, exactly. But we're not talking about small, like you're not getting a corn snake retic ever.
I mean, you can definitely get really, really close to colubrid size uh,
Like bull snakes.
retics. Yeah, no, absolutely. My snake with the most super dwarf blood in it, the most Kalatoa influence. She easily at 4 years old can fit in both hands.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
someone who's not ready for her attitude, that's a giant scary snake. She can, if you're not uh, ready to deal with her food response, or you know don't know how to hook handle something like that, you're in for a treat with her. She might be small, but you know.
No, 100%. And I actually let's caveat that into talking about what makes them different than other common pet snakes, because you mentioned messing with their attitude when she's not having a good day, a food response type of ordeal. Um, and so, yeah, they can be kept to a larger size colubrid. It's
Yeah,
very reasonable to have a male small locality animal like a Kalatoa to stay in the 6 foot range.
yeah.
Um, so, what's different about them that people still need to make sure that they do their homework before jumping in and buying a retic?
So I think just jumping back to kind of the uh, false narrative I was given about retics when I first got into it. Yeah, they may not be the wild caught, bite all over you, piss all over you, crap all over you retics that used to be in the trade when they were coming straight out of Indonesia, but they still have a food response that's unmatched to most other snake species, especially when you're talking the big few. When you're talking about corn snakes, ball pythons, any of the basic starter snakes that most people get into, it's a lot different than something like that because you're having a snake that when you open that cage, it's actively wanting to know why that cage is being opened.
That is a great way to put them. I mean, they're always watching us, learning from us, and yeah, anytime you open that enclosure, you get a head turned towards you. And it's going to be up to you to read your snake's body language and know what that head turn means. Um, Even constrictors like Burmese pythons and anacondas and things, I see more oftentimes with other large constrictors that hooks aren't used nearly as much with retics as they are even with other large constrictors, in a sense of like a retic is almost a necessity to go in with a hook, turn off that feed response. Where I see a lot of videos now, and it's, I haven't, as an adult, I have not kept any large constrictors other than retics. So correct me if I'm wrong, berm keepers and larger boa keepers, anaconda keepers. But it seems like a lot of people can open that glass door and reach in and grab this big old snake, and the snake is fairly easily able to respond in a positive manner.
That is absolutely true. But on the flip side of that, I am the biggest baby when it comes to getting bit, and I avoid it at all costs. So even back when I just had my ball pythons and, got my first boa, started thinking about retics, that kind of thing, I was using the hook with them because, you know, I'd rather introduce myself without having to put myself on the line and then know
Absolutely.
I'm going to have a decent handling experience with my animals. I mean, really, the hook in a lot of ways is just a confidence builder for you and your animal. I mean, it absolutely, when it comes feeding time or close to feeding time, is a necessary tool to just put some distance between yourself, offer something without a heat signature to the snake so they know that, you know, their expectation of getting fed's not getting met. But, uh, I mean, the confidence, I think, is really the biggest thing with the hooks.
No,
Building that between you
I
and your
couldn't.
snake.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when I was a kid and I grew up keeping a bunch of ball pythons and different snakes, I literally would go in with a coat hanger. I was like, "Hey, this isn't food, okay?" I've always been very cautious as well, and I my entire life of keeping snakes, going out and catching snakes. A lot of people don't know this about me. I'm going to put it out there, um, and a lot of people always crack on me for this, but I've only been bit by any of my snakes once, and it was like a couple months ago where I got bit by one of my smaller retics. It was a little defensive nib on the elbow. I didn't even feel it until I looked down and saw little blood drops dripping, and I was like, oh. But yeah, like I am, safety is always first. I know there's a lot of really cool, awesome keepers out there that can, that don't care about being bit. I wish to have your cajones someday.
And most of the time, getting bit's not a big deal. Like I said, I'm a big baby about getting bit, but I've had my experiences where it's either hatchlings or I'm doing something dumb and I, you know, offered myself up. But anytime, it's never been a big major deal. Now, on the flip side of that, that's not always the case with our retics. Even though I haven't experienced it yet, I've seen pictures from mentors of mine. I've heard horror stories from around, the community. But when a male retic gets to breeding season, their teeth can just shred you up. And
Oh yeah.
when we're talking about getting into retics and then eventually getting into breeding, that becomes a whole other ball game, is managing your male retics once they get those urges.
Yeah. So, long story short, when it comes to what makes pet retics different than pet ball pythons or other pet snakes, I mean, you have to deal with an animal that's more intelligent, that reads you just as much as you're reading it, and they have bad days and they have really intense feeding responses. Um, and I'm talking about, you every retic is different. First off, let me preface that. I have some retics where they know it's feeding time and they're on alert and everything, and I can drop down the door, I can slide the glass, and they won't ever lunge out. They'll just wait. And then I put the food in there and boom, they crush it, wrap it, game over. I have other retics though
Hmm.
that I hate drop down doors for retics because of the drop down doors that I have right now. But man, those
Hmm.
things are ramps for some of the snakes that I am trying to feed. You should see me on a feeding day when I have my longest hook possible that I don't even use to get my snakes out. It's just to have control of that drop down door so that I can drop that door down and offer the food with very long tongues because I know that snake is flying out ready to eat.
Hmm.
That's the reality of keeping some retics. Like I said, that's not every retic. So if you decide to get a single pet retic and you're one of the 1% that only gets one retic, then you might get lucky, have a snake that's chill like that. But for the most part, their feed responses, like Nathan was saying earlier, are more intense than most other constrictors. There's arguments of like scrub pythons being, the athletic version of a retic that's already athletic and having the same feed response.
Oh no,
But
there's some like super aggressive eaters. I mean, you look at indigos and some other colubrids that slam their prey against rocks and the sides of their enclosures. Trust me,
I
there's
don't
some
need to
crazy.
constrict you. I'll
Yeah,
crush you with my
there's some
jaws.
crazy responses, but as far as what I'm talking about when I'm talking about food response is they're they're waiting. They know how their enclosure opens. They they know like where the food's coming from. So they know that you're the source, and they are going to come straight out at you until they find that food in front of their face.
Yep. Yep. So make sure that food is in front of their face, not to the right, not to the left.
Don't hold it.
We
Get some tongs. That kind of thing.
if you guys aren't watching and you're just listening, you hear a lot of laughing in our voice, and that's because it truly is a joy to keep these animals, even with their intense feeding responses. Some people might call us crazy. I would agree, but yeah, they're they're great even to do that. Anything else that you can cover that is different about keeping retics versus we talked about feed response and
So,
behavior. Well, we talked
I
about
mean,
behavior and
behavior wise,
yeah,
so
hit that.
you hit on one thing, and then I want to add another topic to this, but um, you said they have good and bad days, and that's totally true. I have snakes that I can deal with 99% of the time, and then there'll be one day out of the year that if I lay hands on them, they are running, huffing, bucking, trying to do anything to keep me away. Does that keep me from pulling them out if they have crap in their cage? No, but it just tells me I need to deal with the situation a little bit different. So you always have to be willing to adapt with the situations that these animals throw you. Uh, I think that's different from, a ball python or a boa constrictor who for the most part, you can go in, grab, toss in a tub, clean their enclosure, throw back in, usually without any incident. Um, and then after that, I just want to share why I got so deep into retics. I mean, I was given those two ball pythons to start out, and that's, you know, when I first got those two ball pythons, I was like, all right, this is it. Ball pythons is what I'm into. Um, and then after owning them for a while, interacting with them for a while, you know, really learning what it is to have a ball python, I got so bored. They're beautiful. They're
No
really
offense,
cool
ball python
animals.
keepers.
No, no offense at all. I think they are amazing animals, and I think they are probably the best starter snake for anyone to get into, and like one of the best reptiles to just pique that curiosity, especially for uh, our younger generations. But
For sure.
Um, for me, I'm older. I wanted a little bit more out of, the snake owning experience. And, every time I had the snake out, it just kind of sat there. And that was cool. I could watch a movie with my snake, but I knew it wasn't going to do anything. It was just kind of hanging out. Now, when I take any of my retics out, it's it's a constant dance. So, I mean, they're never on not on the move. They're always going somewhere, exploring somewhere. The only time that I've seen that change is when I have one of my females out at an expo for an extended period of time, being handed over to multiple people. Then they'll chill out for a little bit, I've
They're
had
like, yeah, I'm done with this running thing.
yeah, yeah, but for the most part, they're moving around. They're wanting to see what's around them, what's outside their cage, what's going on. So that's what initially got me into them, uh, just based off of my experience owning other species.
Yeah. I I agree. I think if you're the type of person where you're like you're contemplating on getting a snake, or maybe you have a snake and you're like, should I get a retic? If you're the kind of person that wants to sit down on your sofa with a relaxed snake on your lap while you watch Netflix,
Retic's not for you.
retic is probably not for you. And
No.
don't get me wrong. I mean, I see videos that surface on the internet and all these different things. They're where, they'll
Oh,
show a glimpse.
you could think, I mean, the best example is probably Sonny and Cher reticulated pythons of
Yeah, Ed.
yeah, Ed Taka. I can't think of his last name right
Sorry
now.
if we
Sorry.
butchered that.
Yep, sorry, Ed. But he has tons of videos of his animals out, and that's because they're so used to that enrichment. They're so used to, being able to hang out and be a part of the family that you get those moments where the snake's chilling on the back of the couch while his daughter's sitting below, and you get one of those big old yawns. So. I mean, it
Right?
definitely can be that experience, but you know, uh,
Off the bat, it won't be. And it'll
no.
take a very long time to get to that point. Ed's done a lot of good work with the snakes.
Well, in my household, I can't do that. If we let the snakes and cats intermingle, I don't think that would be a great day in this household. So,
And even if it didn't go badly ever, it's just still not a good idea.
no, no,
You never know.
yeah,
That
all the
that's funny you
terrible
say that,
examples we've
right?
seen over the years.
Everybody is always like everybody. That's another thing. If you keep a reticulated python, or you plan to, and then you do, you're gonna get crazy questions when you start getting when your snake starts getting 6 to 8 feet, and people start to ask you those crazy questions like, aren't you scared that that snake's gonna eat you? Nathan, you cut hair, and you also have like with the studio, if I'm not, I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, with your studio, you've gone out and you've taken your snakes out there, and you've done events in your where you live, where you've had your snakes out. Do you get questions that are like that?
So it gets even worse because for the last 5 or 6 years, give or take, I've been working at a hair school. So I'm a barber instructor on their barber side of things. And man, I mean, between me working in the barber shop and then the school, the biggest thing I get asked is probably, have you heard the story about the woman who slept with her snake? And as soon as those words come out of anyone's mouth, my eyes roll back into my head. I let them tell their story, and then I have the hardest time not just like correcting the story and telling them it's an old wives' tale, that whole thing.
I
That's
tell them that
probably
it's my aunt.
I need to have more fun with it, man. Uh, yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. I I think the most some of the other absurd questions that I get are, uh, do they sleep with you or do they roam the house? I think just A reptile's cold-blooded. It's not. It's not hanging out in my temperature-controlled house. It wouldn't survive. At least not very well. Uh, and then let's see. Number three of the most absurd questions is probably. Oh man, I had it. Just give me a second here. So, let's see. We hit on the lady sleeping in her bed. Um, oh, do you ever let the cats and the snakes mix? Or I used to have a toy poodle. Does the toy poodle and the snake get along? No. They don't interact. No.
I can't say no or yes for a fact, but they don't interact.
No, they don't get along because we don't give them the opportunity.
People, let me tell you about my best friend. Yeah, no,
Pour one out for
my
Big.
man, R.I.P. My favorite question. Um, I had a daughter a year and a half ago, and it's usually never directly asked to me. But again, if you're gonna keep retics and you have a spouse or a significant other, and
Hmm.
like my wife at first did like not want me to keep any snakes. I convinced her back in 2018 to let me get one retic, and now we have almost 20. So what she does is now she likes them. Now she thinks they're cool. So especially when the babies hatch, she like likes to hold them. She puts them on her leg and she like puts them on her Instagram story, right? And she's like, "That thing is huge." We're talking about a pure Calitoa super dwarf reticulated python that's a baby just hatched out. Oh, that thing is huge. And she's like, "Oh,
Oh
this
yeah.
is the baby," right? And they're like, "Oh my gosh, are you scared?" They asked my wife this, and my wife has learned. She does great. She listens to me nonstop and hates me for it. But people will ask her like, "Aren't you scared that the snake's gonna get out of its cage and eat your baby?" That's my favorite question, and one that literally, sadly, in the last like year and a half, I've probably have addressed like over a dozen times. That's like probably on average once a month.
Now, being realistic about this question,
Hmm.
what is your plan on introducing your child to the snakes over time?
Yeah, that's man, that's a good question. So I posted a story on my Instagram a few days back of I had my so what I do on Sundays. Sundays is daddy date. My wife's working, it's me and the baby. And I normally clean on Sundays. If she has a short nap, what I do is when she wakes up from her nap, it's snack or lunchtime. I'll put her meal on her high chair on the tray and I take her into the garage where all the snakes are. And I have her in the back and she watches and I take him out. And the other day I was recording a video of my ocelot in my hand and you can hear her in the background. Wow. Like she loves them every day when I'm home or when my wife's home or even when my mother-in-law is watching. It's great. She goes to the garage and she taps on it and then she reaches up and she's like, "Come on, let's go see the snakes." So I've already started taking her in. She loves to see them. She's pointing at them and she does that. So I've already started that. And I started that probably when she was about a year old.
Or
And now that,
maybe what I'm looking for is what precautions are you going to take
oh, for sure. Okay. Yeah, totally.
once she's able to figure out how doors open, how the locks work, that kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
maybe not even 5, 6 years old, but 8, 10 when things really start clicking.
Yeah. Um, by clicking, I'm going to assume that my 8 and 10-year-old can listen to basic instructions. If they can't, I got a whole other problem on my plate. But
We're not
so
getting into that. Yeah.
I actually think like at the age of 2 to 3, like I was just over a good friend in the reptile industry's house when I went to the Conroe show. And I won't mention her name or her kid's name because it's her kid. I don't know if she wants that public. But her kid is 2 years old, walking around the snake room while we're there, and he has one of the keys in his hand. And so she was very clear with like, you know, not taking off the lock. And so, you know, although 8 and 10 years old is the like it really even starts way earlier than that. So like getting them to understand basic no, like they're not allowed to open it without parental supervision. So my rules are gonna be like to answer your question at around 6 years old, they have friends over and they want to sneak into the garage to see the snakes, they are to
Yeah.
never, ever, ever open a cage on their own. And personally, I'd probably, if I'm not, once it gets to that age, I'll probably have like a lockbox with the keys in there.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to be safe. And again, the reason for the safety, guys, is because you open a retic's enclosure and you don't know what the outcome is unless you know that animal and you have a hook in your hand.
Well, I mean, I don't want to talk about it, but I mean, it leads you to, I believe it was a couple years ago in Indiana, a woman was going over to a house that had some reticulated pythons, and a 9 foot reticulated python she wasn't familiar with ended up wrapping her and, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Sad. I mean,
causing her to lose her life. So it doesn't matter how
extremely
old you
sad
are,
story.
honestly. It just,
Exactly.
yeah.
So for like another thing, if you want to own a pet retic and it gets to the size and the strength, and we're talking about 6, 7, 8 feet, like really try to avoid that snake being around your neck.
Hmm.
There's no reason to other than to look cool, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, if
my
it's
fiance
slithering and
loves to take those pictures, but you know, even with
it's
our most calm snakes, I just, you know,
it makes you nervous, right?
yeah,
It
yeah,
makes me nervous. I mean, my snakes will do it, and I let them hang out and everything, but their face, I'm always patting their head away from me,
yeah. Or I
always
always
keeping their
have
head away.
control of their first half, so I know I can get it over my
Yeah.
shoulder, whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But safety precautions is just, because I would love for my kid to be helping with cleaning
Oh
and
yeah,
feeding
free
and
help.
yeah, exactly. All that good stuff when it starts to happen. And so, man, one of my lights just went out. For those of you that are watching, you're probably like, Psh, amateur. Well, I am. So yeah, just probably locks for the keys once they get older, just because I don't want my child with an undeveloped frontal lobe in their brain to want to do something cool with their friends over. And then always just teaching them by observation.
Yeah.
Observe me first. And, as a parent, I guess that's just one of those gut decisions when you decide it's the right time to allow your kid to start to use a hook, familiarize themselves with the snakes. I have one, maybe two snakes in my possession right now that are super chill, super easygoing, that are perfect first time type of retics to introduce my daughter when she's younger.
So we're
To
talking a lot about kids, and you know, is a pet retic gonna be ultimately right for you? Whether it's just that 1% of people who's just owning one, or most of us who end up keeping multiple. But my question for you is just mostly budget wise. So, you having a child, how many retics do you think, not in cost of enclosure, not in cost of the animal, but cost in maintaining that animal, feeding it, maintaining it day to day, all the supplies you need? How many retics do you think is equivalent to raising a child? This is just a random question I have in my head because
the
I have
no no
no children.
no super common question. There's actually it's the retic to kid ratio. No, I'm joking. So no,
and I mean, we're talking because we mostly deal with dwarf crosses, so we're dealing with stuff that's not getting huge.
yeah,
We're not
medium and small type of retics.
getting 10-pound rabbits for our animals.
No. Um,
So,
yeah. So, like, okay. So let me. I'm going to summarize that question. You want to know what's the equivalence of taking care of a toddler,
yep,
and what's the equivalence to that in taking care of retics?
in number of retics, yeah.
Okay.
If
So,
you were to guess.
I mean, taking care of a toddler when they're awake is a full time job. Um, Full time. Always have to keep your eye on them. All that kind of stuff. If I were to, I mean,
So
with
not
time, with
not in
feeding.
energy spent. I'm talking pure funds, pure cash coming out of your wallet.
Oh. Okay. Funds like the financial portion of it, man.
Yes.
Diapers, all that kind of stuff, and then
Yep.
talk about the food in that aspect, not including
Yep.
caging though.
Not including caging or price of the
See,
animal.
that's the thing. I think you should include caging and pricing, because daycare is expensive, man. But if we're excluding that, I would probably say like with feeding a retic and time spent cleaning and supplies and all that stuff, kind of like the equivalents of wipes and all that. Probably like, I don't know, man, maybe large ballpark of 6 to 10.
Okay.
Um, Keeping a baby with diapers, all that gets expensive. But like when you keep 10 foot, 12 foot retics, 8 foot retics, and you start to get into the 2 pound pigs, the 3 pound bunnies, and bunnies are expensive, man. It
Especially
add,
now.
yeah, it adds up.
All right.
I'm trying to
Well,
get this light on.
yeah, I, that's a good answer. So I mean, if you care for a toddler, or if you think you have the funds to care for a toddler, you may be financially set to care for up to six dwarf cross
Yeah.
retics.
And if you're keeping a toddler and your budget is capped, don't get 6 retics.
But yeah, so moving on from that, uh, I mean, just general husbandry. So I mean, we didn't talk about the cost of the snake in that. We didn't talk about the cost of enclosure. What's what do you think is
By the way, I'm ditching the light for the rest of the episode because I'm getting annoyed. I can't find the
sounds
cord.
good to me? What do you think is the bottom line you need monetarily to invest in getting your first retic?
Yeah. So we're putting a figure on this, a number.
I mean, rough figure because we're talking about an animal whose species ranges in localities that can get, 5 to 8 foot to, upwards of 18 foot. So, I mean, caging cost is obviously going to vary, and then animal pricing is
Yeah.
going to
So
vary almost the
let's
opposite way.
let's talk about animal pricing first. If you want to get just a mainland retic,
Okay.
it's going to be very, very cheap to buy a snake. You could probably go to any given show, find a normal mainland retic, and leave that show for buying that snake for $75 to $100. Go on a Sunday. People will want to sell those things easy. However, if it's a mainland retic, you're going to need a 6 foot enclosure within the first year. So there goes $800. If you want to provide any type of enrichment for that enclosure, plan to spend another $100. Um, you're feeding for a retic that size, put away $500 a year. Um, you're going to need cleaning supplies and bedding. Are you keeping it on paper? Paper is going to last you a while and it's cheaper. Is it aesthetically appealing? Is it as good for the snake in terms of enrichment? People will argue no. So if you want to go with a substrate, that for a 6 foot enclosure for a 9 foot snake in a year, that's going to pee a lot and poop a lot. You're going to have to set a couple to few $100 aside for bedding.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, what people don't realize with keeping mainlands, sure, you can buy a snake for $100 versus buying a small or medium locality animal cross for $1,000.
No,
But
I mean one of my wild types that I sold this year, uh, it falls into the super dwarf guidelines. I think I sold, you can get in for somewhere around 600, five
oh yeah,
hundred
yeah,
bucks. Yeah.
yeah. I'm overestimating just a little bit because the point that I'm trying to make here is that you can spend $1,200 on this snake up front,
Hmm.
and your costs for the first 2 years of that animal and the upfront cost of buying that snake for $1,200 versus buying your $75 mainland normal and then its growth for the next 2 years, you're going to be breaking even with both of those, if not spending more money on the mainland. So,
At
you know,
least in food costs for sure. I think
yeah,
the smart person who gets into a mainland retic uh, right away, probably should plan on just getting the adult enclosure and making that snake as comfortable as it can be while it grows in that enclosure. It's the
Yeah.
absolute cheapest way to do it, besides having to just keep upgrading through the life cycle of that animal.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, costs are going to um, vary drastically, but whatever you do, I mean, if you, my advice is you want a pet retic and you want a small, medium sized retic, you can get in the game for five, six, $700. I would still have $2,000 ready to go upfront costs because if you're getting your first pet retic, don't settle on getting a rack for that snake, right? You're getting your first animal. Don't get a rack. You sure, breeders keep their snakes. I have snakes in racks. I'm not ditching or dissing the rack game at all, but you're getting your first pet retic. No sense of keeping it in an enclosed rack where you're gonna only see it when you pull it out. Um, get a cage, get an enclosure, get a good one, get enrichment, make that thing a pet, right? Fall in love with what these animals are worth falling in love over, and then make the decision if you're going to buy a bunch, possibly breed, and then make the adjustments. But even then, always try to do the best that you can. And so I'm going to say if you're going to spend $500 on a retic, have $2,000 ready to go.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I mean, on the flip side of that, I have seen people in the past who have wanted to get it into it very budget friendly and set up, a little sterilite tub container, but I just see so many problems with that, especially when you add heat to one of those plastic enclosures. So many things can go wrong. It's
Yeah.
not very aesthetically pleasing and doesn't make you look very good as a keeper either.
Yeah.
Um, but
Now, 4 years ago, I did that. My very first retic
oh
I
yeah,
got was a Kayawati locality. I got a sterilite tub for it,
yeah,
got a bunch of plants in there and hides, and I kept my first retic like that until I got the money to get, a PVC enclosure. So, like
it's not a
Nathan said,
bad place to start.
it's not. It's you can budget start with a pet retic. Great.
But I think the giant caveat there is, I mean, just in this industry, we always need to be moving forward. We always need to be doing better by
Absolutely.
these
Growing.
animals. Um, you know, um, our caging requirements, they're all right, but we could always give more to our animals. So it's just something that you always want to keep conscious of how your animals are
Yeah.
being kept. Is that really the best environment for them? And
Yeah.
if you really want to do right by these animals, I think Lucas is right. You need a good couple $1,000s up front just to be able to treat these animals the way they need to be treated.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, in my honest opinion, that goes for any species of snakes. Like, there's the ball python argument that these snakes thrive in these ARS and freedom breeder rack systems.
The
And
40-gallon breeder tubs, yeah.
right, you can make that argument. But again, if you're getting a pet snake, then get do what's best for the animal and what's going to just speak well for the animal in and of itself. That would be like buying buying $1,000 dog and feeding it the old school $20 for a 60-pound bag of like Beneful, and you know not taking it outside, and just giving it a low quality of life. People don't when Most people don't do that with their dogs. Therefore, I don't think we should do that with our snakes, even if the industry says, well, they do well in tubs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I kept and bred my first retics in, let's see, they're 4 by 1 foot tall, by 2 foot deep enclosures. Did they breed? Yeah, they bred. Did they grow up fine? Yeah, they grew up fine. They grew up healthy. Did I feel good about it once they were adult size breeding in an enclosure that's 1 foot tall? When I know that that I have learned that these snakes are, semi-arboreal, um, I can't in good conscience keep my snakes in that enclosure, especially the big girls. Like they need more. So, even us as breeders, where we have to be somewhat space conscious to, what
Hmm.
our facility will allow us, we still are finding ways to enhance the way we keep our animals so that they are living better lives. They're not running into any issues like pushing, uh, you know, uh, any of the destructive behaviors that can come from such an inquisitive animal that's
Yeah.
constantly needing that stimulation.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I just went through my second breeding season, my first year of having a lot of retics. And right now I have 141 quart rack. So 41 quart tubs.
Mhm.
That's a 5 tier. I have my hatchling racks. And then I have a stack of 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 and 7 foot enclosures. My goal for myself after my next successful breeding season is to get rid of those grow up racks. Like I have that 41 quart rack and then I have a VE6 rack.
Mhm.
That's like my step up from the hatchling rack and before the 41 quart. My goal for myself is to get rid of my 41 quart, to get rid of that transition VE6 rack, and I would like to have a wall that has for my holdbacks and younger snakes a wall of 3 foot enclosures by 30 inches deep by about like 15 to 18 inches high, and to do stacks like that to give a small enclosure for those grow up animals until they're ready to transition into their adult cage.
Yeah.
That, and
No.
again, that's something that I'm trying to work to get better on, because at the end of the day, it's important for us who've been doing this for a little bit to understand that we can make improvements. We have to.
Well, and it's hard too because there's not a cookie cutter
There's not.
enclosure for someone who wants to keep super dwarf reticulated pythons or dwarf crosses or mainlands for that matter. You know, being semi-arboreal, a lot of us breeders or keepers now are looking towards perches. We're looking towards
Yep.
shelving to add square footage into our enclosures. Knowing that these snakes hang out on the riverbanks a lot of the time, I mean, you need to provide a large reservoir of water. I notice, you know, 5 out of 6 of my animals that I keep right now, once a month they're spending 8 to 10 hours in that water, submerged, not coming out. So there's
That's called the Utah syndrome.
that's true. That could
No, no,
purely be based off of my environment, but I do
I
think
agree
that
though.
these snakes need some swimming time, some climbing time,
Yep.
time outside their enclosure, getting to explore different environments, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I my 14-foot Solaire, I have a 3 gallon water bowl for her, and probably once a month I'll go in, see that the entire cage is soaking wet, and she's sitting in tight. I mean, this is a 14-foot animal inside of a 3 gallon. Like, she's wanting that water just to soak. I mean, it's really cool to see. So yeah, I, back to where we were.
Yep.
$2,000, I think, is a good startup to make sure that you are just giving your animal a very, very good start to its life. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back when we, made our initial caging and then first animal investment, and I want to say that we put probably, I mean, we got a few cages, so that added to it, but I want to say we spent probably around 4 grand just getting into it. So that's
Oh
a
yeah.
very realistic number that Lucas is putting forth, even if you're getting into a mainland, just because that caging cost is going to get so high so quick.
It gets up, and especially you could be a different type. There's the person that likes to start minimalistic and work its way as the money comes in and as the snake grows and getting what it needs, and then there's people who just like to go all out from the get-go. I mean, there's people who buy PVC cages and get an affordable PVC cage that just need to have it replaced in 2 years. There's people that go with like top tier PVC caging or ABS plastic caging, um, that right off the bat, and that those cages can cost over $1,000 depending on the size, and well over $1,000. So yeah, so at the end of the day, to prepare yourself, and is the retic a good pet snake for you, is the willingness that you're going to set aside those funds and just being financially prepared to house a snake um, long term, and even that upfront cost. It's not cheap. It's not inexpensive, nor should it be with the responsibility of keeping a retic, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. And something I think we should get into is just like keeper requirements, because I
Mm,
mean, I fell into kind of a unique situation. So I got lucky and met one of my mentors locally, Richard Bilbo, who breeds dwarf and
legend.
super dwarf cross reticulated pythons. And, I got lucky and got into very small bloodlines right off the bat, not knowing that a couple years later I'd have some really serious health problems, all stemming from my back. And, keeping even some of the larger dwarf locality species, while not completely out of the picture, isn't the smartest idea for my state of being right now. So I think you need to look into what you can appropriately keep on your own. You're not always going
Hmm.
to have a second person there. And, really once you pass that 8, 9 foot mark, you kind of want someone else there,
Yeah,
given what the situation has for you that day.
yeah. Now I'm not gonna lie. I do handle. I have handled my Slayer, 14-foot animal
Yeah,
by myself, and I know
there's
someone
nothing
else
wrong
who,
with that.
and I know someone else, that is openly public about it. He said it on some interviews as well, and says it all the time on Facebook. But Eric Lee says some of his bigger females he holds by himself too, and that goes down to your skill level and understanding and trust with your animal, and just knowing and reading your animal. So for example, if my wife is home and my Solayer's cage is destroyed. My Solayer, by the way, Sasha, she is a 14-foot pure Solayer, and she's a very difficult girl to handle on my own. She's never once made me feel like I've been in danger. But if she
Yeah,
is having a bad day and I don't have anybody home, I wait. My wife gets home from work. I say, hey, we mess around. We have like we have a what's it called? A safe word. I'm like, if you ever hear me anywhere in the house yell pineapples, a snake has bit me and it's got me constricted, and I need you to run down and help me manage this snake to get off of me.
I thought pineapples was universal for swinging, Lucas. Not I've been bit by my snake.
We made it spicy.
Okay. Well, um,
No, but so
no, and I
I
think
will.
the major thing to add to that is I don't think there's anything wrong to handling any of your large constrictors, whether they be 12 foot, 14 foot, 18 foot. I don't care, as long as you really, really know your animals. I think both you and Eric, who are fine with saying that they'll handle these animals on their own. I think
It's
you'd
still
both
not the
say
most.
if they're having an off day or if they're giving you any kind of sketchy attitude,
Yeah, skip.
you're not gonna ego pull that snake out of its
No,
enclosure.
absolutely not. And I want to emphasize this, that even though I do that at times when she's being a sweetheart, I still understand what the risks are, and it's still not the most responsible thing to do. So,
Mhm.
flat out saying that. I'm not saying this so that other people could be like, oh, well, Lucas does it, so it's okay. No, actually, I 100% go back to what Nathan was saying. Nathan was saying if you have a large snake and it's 8, 9 feet over, have someone present, have someone in the house, and use pineapples if someone's in a different room. And make sure that you have, like, my wife, who tolerates me keeping my snakes, she thinks they're cool. I think she thinks they're cooler than she presents to me. But anyways, um, I have a plan
I
with
think
her.
that's a
She,
pipe dream in our head.
yeah, no kidding. I have a plan with her. She knows exactly what to do if I get bit and wrapped. She's gonna grab the Listerine bottle. She's gonna put the Listerine in the snake's mouth, or she's gonna help grab the tail end to try to unwrap, or give me the tail so I can bite the tail, do some crazy wild man stuff to get that snake to let go. So my wife has been briefed on all this. So again, safety measures. So another important thing about keeping retics you need to be aware of is if the snake gets larger, you need someone present, and also make sure that that person that's present is informed of what
Or
to
at
do.
least have yeah, at least have a game plan. I mean, there's times when I have to clean my 9 foot aneries enclosure, and you know, I'd say about 60/40, she's having a good day versus having a bad day. And a bad day is her bucking the hook and giving me hell as I'm trying to pull her out. But
That's my favorite.
90% of the time, pull her out, throw her in the tub. She's all good to go.
That's a hundred
But
percent of the time with my Coyote. She hates being taken out.
every time she's having one of those 40% days and I'm pulling her out and no one's home, I have a game plan. I know exactly
Mm-hmm.
what I'm going to do if something goes awry. I have, like you said, the mouthwash ready to go. Probably plan A is try to grab that tail and gnaw on it a little bit. And then, you know, I always clean with my door closed so that even if that snake bites me and gets away, I know that it's at least enclosed within the room and that it's
Yep.
not going anywhere.
This isn't a ball python biting you and constricting you and hurting your hand. This is a snake that can bite your thigh, wrap your waist, wrap your leg, wrap your shoulder and your torso. So, while we were saying that on the topic of Listerine, let's talk about like cleaning and expectations of cleaning and what people are going to be getting into when they have even a retic that's 8 foot, right? Because even a female Kalatoa at 7 to 10 years old, more than likely going to hit 8 feet. And so, what's it like for you? You keep on
So,
paper just like I do, so I know you don't enjoy the smell of retic piss.
no, I clean. I'm trying to think of this more on a one snake level more than my collection level, just because I'm cleaning every single day. I only have
6 days a
snakes.
week for me. Yep.
Yeah, I only have 6 snakes at this point. I'm cleaning every single day. Um, if it's one snake, I feed. 2 days later, they are at least peeing. So I'm cleaning then. Uh, I replace the water every time I clean. 2 days later, 3 days later, they're gonna poo again. And then you're like, good, that's their meal, right? Well, no. In between the 2 3 week feeding period, depending on where I'm at in the year, they're gonna pee 2 or 3 more times. So I am constantly cleaning pee. That is the number one reason why I keep on paper. Uh,
Yep.
just if I were to let that go a couple more days, even the smell alone, the amount of moisture they're sitting on, the bacteria that could be building up. The list goes on in my mind of why I'd rather just keep on paper and clean every couple days, go through that, just because these animals do not stop. There's always a mess. It's not a ball python or a blood python where you're cleaning up every once in a while or spot
Yeah.
cleaning. It's not that simple.
And
They're
I've
dropping
kept
a
other
massive amount.
yeah, no, 100%. And I've kept other species of snakes too, and there's something about the smell of retic pee that is just very delicious. No. It's there's just a unique odor to it versus other snake pee that I've had. And maybe it's not so much the different odor, but maybe it's just the volume and the amount that makes it stronger, but it's different. And yeah, so just be prepared to clean often. That's something that you need to be aware of. And one thing that also I think is important to keep aware of, like, when you keep a ball python, right? We were just talking about, or you keep a corn snake, you can go on like a 4-day vacation, 5-day vacation. Your snake, for the most part, is going to be perfectly fine. I have been on a 4 or 5 day vacation and come back to a snake that tipped its water bowl and developed the early starting signs of an RI because of the built up humidity, the heat, tipping it literally the day that I left. So I would highly recommend that you have a buddy or someone that can check up on the snakes in case they need to. I understand that that's a luxury for some people. They don't have people to do that. But at the very least, at least have a camera if you can of some type. I keep like a little Wise camera,
Mm-hmm.
or a Eufy camera, just watching them so that while I'm on vacation, I can also stress a lot. um,
That's
but
about
yeah,
all
that
I can do. I mean, finding someone that is going to be able to do any kind of maintenance for you while
it's
you're out
hard.
of town with these animals is going to be near impossible unless you know someone who is already keeping some form of large constrictor.
Yeah, maybe you can find someone who keeps other snakes and they can have help with hatchlings and
Hmm.
yearlings and
Oh, that's
smaller
easy.
animals to check on them. That's a walk in the park. But yeah, no, I would not like. Right now, I have this cool dude who's coming over to my house on Sunday, Mondays, and Tuesday nights, helping with cleaning the entire collection and feeding and stuff. He's going into high school, and he's amazing. But I still wouldn't have him come over and be like, "Hey, so my wild caught Calatoa just spilled her water. I need you to take her out and
Yeah.
replace it." No, I would never do that. But yeah, just that's something to keep in mind. I mean, these snakes are, man, these snakes are phenomenal to keep. They're so rewarding, unlike any other animal, but I will say they're a little bit more stressful to keep, just like anxiety provoking of like if you want to leave town or um retics have this tendency that not a lot of other species do to push if things aren't going well. So
Even if
put
things are going great. I've been sitting in this room now for an hour or so talking with you, and just me being in the room, every snake is cruising their enclosure. Now that's not a problem. Most of them are just cruising because they know some activities going on, but the hatchlings, they think when you're in the room, especially for an extended period of time, that it's feeding time. Now, feeding time is 2 days away, but because of their attitude tonight and them thinking that it's feeding time, I'm most likely going to have to thaw out some food just to keep them from pushing the next 24 hours. So feeding is as much maintenance as it is or sorry, feeding is as much maintenance as cleaning is with these retics. I mean, these animals will almost tell you what they need. If you're slacking on them at all, they'll let you know.
No, 100%. And the one thing that, like, I'll have people message me about like my retics behaving this way, my retics behaving that way. And the number one thing that I like to tell people, even if you have one retic, spend as much time as you can in that room that you have your snake in. Observe your
Hmm.
animal, look at your animal, be with them, as much as you can because they will tell you what it is that they need. It's weird, and maybe a lot of people are gonna hear this and be like, "Ah, that's BS." But I literally can tell the difference between a like husbandry error pushing and a feeding pushing. Like just by the force, the like just their behavior, their erraticness differences, I can tell the difference between the types of pushing that they're doing.
Oh, and I can
So,
tell the difference in cruising. I have
yep.
my adult albino. She's cruising the cage really slowly, really just checking everything out. She just, she probably wants to come out and explore. I have another snake who just shed out, and now he's just chilling on his perch, looking out the window, seeing what's going on. The other two snakes that are cruising insistently, they are right up against the glass. They're cruising back and forth and back and forth. That tells me, all right, if I don't thaw out some
Time to eat.
food, yeah, I'm just in for more of that. So,
And that's the beautiful
you,
thing about keeping these animals is that they talk to
yeah.
you, and it's actually once you spend time with them, they're so rewarding to keep because they teach you about them and you learn about each of their individual personality. And so, um, just yeah, I mean, if you want to get a pet retic, and if you want to, I mean, if you want a snake that like is, I don't know, man. I think that they are such an awesome, and it's like once you're into them, it's like this unconditional love that you can give to them. If you just spend time with them. I know we've talked about a lot of differences in a light that shares um, some of the complications and things that you should be made aware of. But going back to the very first question that you asked me, Nathan, like, should most people keep retics? And I think the reason why a lot of this information is more of like what they do differently that's difficult and an obstacle to get over is because most people shouldn't. But that doesn't mean that you can't. I do think that people are very, very much capable of, but you just got to be willing to go all out for the animal because that animal is going to give you back what you give it.
You know, this relates a lot to what I try to tell my students in the barber school. So the barbering industry and the hair industry in general is a super high turnover industry. Most people don't last a couple years before trying to find a new field. Um, and I think I would tell someone who wants to get a retic the same thing I would tell a student who wants to be a great barber. Um, if you're not willing to completely obsess over it and practice it constantly, you will never be great.
Yeah,
So
100%.
it's not for the person who wants to have a snake in their living room and interact with it once in a while. It's not for the person who just wants to look cool and have a big snake
Yeah.
and
They're not display
show
snakes.
their friends feeding it a live rabbit every once in a while. It's not for you.
Oh, don't do it.
It's it's not for the person who thinks, "Oh, I'm going to become one with the snake and live with my animals." It's not for you. We have one of those here in Utah. So,
Let's get them on the
you know,
show.
please no. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for someone who's going to be scared of an animal who's occasionally, when you open its enclosure, going to come with its mouth wide open right at you.
Those are
If
just
that's a
kisses.
problem, no, I know, but if that's a problem, this animal's not right for you. But I mean, it's something that is for the person who's obsessed with these animals and is in complete love with these animals is something that is very easily manageable
Yeah, 100,
over
and
time
that's
and with some experience.
yeah, absolutely. Like I cannot stress like I do believe. Okay, so answer earlier was not everyone should keep retics. Very, very, very few people should keep retics. But I do think most people are very capable of keeping retics. You just need to be willing to grow with it and not just give up on it and let it just sit there. Yeah, because these snakes, like I said, whatever you put in is what you're going to get from them. And um, if you do not give them your attention, love, and need, and when I say love, I mean, yes, I talk to my snakes. I get that little cute pet voice. That's because I love them. Not everyone has to do that. I'm not saying that you need to like love your snake like you love your dog, but you need to love the grind of keeping your snake. You need to love the bad days, the good days, the pooping, the peeing. Um, you need to just give them the passion that you have for them. And if you decide after all this that like you're up for the challenge of keeping a retic because it is a challenge, but it's such a rewarding challenge, then yeah, I mean, it's an amazing experience if you're willing to commit to that animal. I mean, like, what are some of the things, Nathan, that you, I mean, we've talked about that, but something maybe we haven't mentioned. What do you love about keeping them?
I think it just mostly circles back to their inquisitiveness and just, you know, the level of thinking that you experience within this snake versus other snakes I've interacted with. My experience is pretty limited. The bulk of my time has been spent with, ball pythons, some Burmese pythons, you know, a handful of other colubrids and boas over the years, but it's just how they think, how they act. You can just see it.
Yeah.
Um, it's really hard to explain, but once you get hands-on with any reticulated python, you can just see them processing in a way that you've never experienced with another animal.
And yeah, I mean, I think one thing that really draws them to me, aside their inquisitiveness, is like their sheer strength. Um, my first example of like really seeing their strength is so I did something I don't recommend. I kept retics for 2 years and then thought it would be cool to get a wild caught pair of calatoas, which are a small locality. But my female was still 9 feet. My male was 7 feet, but these were mature, over 10-year-old animals that were fed well when they were imported. Um, and man, I had like a 5 foot Coyote and a 5.5, 6 foot mainland orange glow. And then I got to actually like hold this large constrictor um, after a long drive of picking it up. And I was like, oh, this snake is going to go somewhere. And I really don't have a choice. And we're talking about a 9 foot animal. These get much bigger. I'm now managing a 14-foot animal. Um, so these snakes are strong. I mean, I remember I had a 5 foot Ternate Island female I was holding for 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, she decided she was hungry. And she decided to wrap my hand like a feed response, and she put her mouth right on the top of my hand. And I was looking at her and I was like, you better not bite me. And I'm sitting there nervous, and she didn't bite me, thankfully, but she had my hand wrapped. And she was a small snake at the time. And I was like, holy, that was in my mind when I was like, all right, I'm going to consciously make an effort to not let these snakes around my neck ever. Because that experience of my hand turning purple in 2 minutes, I was like, okay. And they earned my respect instantly. And that's when I was like, yeah, it doesn't matter what size these animals are, respect them. And
Yeah,
that's what I love about them.
in my let's see, 6 years of keeping these animals now, I've only had that experience happen maybe a handful of times, two or three
Hmm.
times. but it can go straight from everything's cool to, hey, I'm hungry now. And I don't know what triggered it over the years, but it'll make you think, okay, I have to really like
Yeah,
no matter what I think is
respect.
going good, I have to make sure that I always have control of the situation or can
As
manage the situation.
as the young kids say, when you're handling retics, always stay woke. But yeah, no, always be just always be present. Um don't ever be forgiving and lazy and non-observant, and just stay woke, my friends. Nathan, you have anything else that you think is good for people to know when considering buying a retic?
Uh, I mean, the biggest thing, do your research. Know where these animals come from, know what environment they live in, know who you're
That's
talking
Indonesia, by the
to.
way.
Yeah, yeah. Know who you are talking to. Um, Make sure you're getting good information. Make sure you're buying from reputable people. Um, there are so many um, outlets in this industry and people that are willing to guide you in the right direction now. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just do as much research as you can. Make sure the animal that you expect to get is the animal that you end up buying. Um, Especially when we talk about dwarf crosses, you need to make sure that, if you only want to manage a 10-foot and under reticulated python, that's what you get and that you're buying from someone who's going to be able to show you verifiable bloodlines in that
Yeah,
animal and making sure that you're just, you know, cross your
yeah,
T's, dot your I's, that kind of thing.
yeah. Do your research. A lot of people say get a mentor. Try to find someone who has them in your area that you can work with them, and I recommend that 100%. I didn't have that luxury to do that,
That's where it
but I
started for
also
me.
I also bought a baby. I also bought a baby, and I grew with it.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
big
still
too.
think, yeah, I still recommend people, if you can, interact with them first. Like, after holding a 10-foot retic and wrestling it to cooperate, you might decide it's not for you. I didn't get that luxury. I didn't get to tell that. I still think it's for me, but if I could go back and do things differently in terms of like the decision, I still think I made the right decision. But yeah, I think it would have been awesome to get that experience beforehand. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Just do your research, watch videos like this, watch other videos, read about them, and ask people who keep and breed them. And
Go ask your local community.
yeah,
I mean, in any local community, there's bound to be someone working with some form, some locality of retic out there. So, reach out.
yeah,
Reach out to people, and most of the time in this industry, people are pretty giving and
yeah.
will allow you to experience this animal if it's something you're really interested in.
If you're nervous about being annoying people and asking too many questions, and oh, I'm asking basic stuff, this person doesn't have time. I mean, um, I won't speak for Nathan, although I'm sure he feels the same way I do. Message one of us.
Yeah, I do. Well, oh, I thought you were going to say we were the annoying people at one point.
No, no, we
You
totally
know,
were. I actually, I still am. You can ask people like
yeah,
Garrett,
still am.
Aubrey, Eric, um, ask them all. You never stop learning with these animals, but yeah, reach out to us. Reach out to beginners, reach out to people who've been doing this for a shorter time, that can give you more time, and more answers, and openly communicate. I mean, that's what this community and this podcast is all about, is giving you guys the opportunity to reach out, talk to us, and us create a community of new keepers and breeders to talk about the ins and outs of keeping retics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't
All
think
right.
there's a better place to wrap up, my man. So,
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for listening to tonight's episode. I hope that you guys got a lot of information. I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. What was it like for you keeping your first retic? What did we miss that you guys also want to provide to our listeners? Comment that down below. Anything that we hit that you agree, disagree. Let's interact. Let's talk about this in the comments. Subscribe, like, help our community grow so that we can help grow the industry and new keepers, new breeders to do right for these animals and just have a place of positivity to grow as a community. Nathan, man, great talking to you always. I really appreciate these episodes again to just talk about these animals that we love. Guys, once again, thanks for listening, and tune in next Friday to our very next episode of the Retic Lounge.